nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, wonderful people. It is 7 o'clock and I'm Laurence Fox. Coming up on the show this evening. First, I'm joined by Conservative commentator, author and speaker and host of the Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire, Michael Knowles. Then, the figures are in and they're not great. 13 years in power and the so-called Conservatives, in name only, have left the borders wide open. The WHO, aka the World Hater Organisation, wants to lock us down again. No, not because of COVID, but because of any other reason they can think of. These stories and more with our Fox and News Hounds panel, Dominic Samuels, commentator and broadcaster, and Dennis McShane, former Labour Minister for Europe. And finally, and most importantly, I want to hear from you. Send your views my way, gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after the headlines with Rory Stewart.
Thank you, Laurence. It happens all the time. Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. We're going to start with some breaking news just in the last half hour, and Philip Schofield has resigned from ITV after admitting to having an affair with what he called a younger male colleague at This Morning. He's told the Daily Mail he lied about the relationship to his wife, ITV, colleagues, friends and agents. Schofield admitted helping the man get into television when he was a teenager before developing a consensual on-off relationship with him. Philip is stepping down from ITV with immediate effect, meaning he won't be presenting the British Soap Awards next week or any other show on the channel. He has apologised, saying the relationship, which has now ended, was unwise but not illegal. A man has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 32 years for the murder of 15-month-old Jacob Lennon. Jake Drummond, the partner of the toddler's mother, was jailed following a campaign of cruel and sadistic abuse. The boy suffered multiple injuries over a 3-week period in 2019. The victim's mother, Louise Lennon, was jailed for 10 years for allowing Jacob's death. Well, in other news, the parents of a 10-month-old boy who murdered him on Christmas Day in 2020 have been jailed for life. Finlay Bowden's mother, Shannon Marsden, was given a minimum term of 27 years, whilst his father, Stephen Bowden, was given 29 years as a minimum. The baby was taken into care shortly after birth due to child protection concerns, but he was put back into his parents' care just 39 days before he died. Police say the pair were jailed for an incomprehensible crime.
Bowden and Marsden, from the moment Finlay returned to their care, throughout the trial, after conviction, and even at sentence, have never taken responsibility for their actions. They lied and obstructed professionals who were attempting to see Finlay to establish that he was being cared for in the correct manner.
The First Minister of Wales has held a meeting in Cardiff after the deaths of 2 teenagers that sparked a riot. 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans were killed while riding an e-bike. The police watchdog is investigating after CCTV footage emerged that showed a police van following the teens just before their deaths. Cars were set alight and windows smashed in the violence, with 9 people arrested following the disorder. Pope Francis has skipped meetings today because of a fever. The Vatican hasn't provided any more details on the 86-year-old's health, but has said he didn't receive anyone in audiences this morning. Well, it comes after he spent 5 days in hospital at the end of March. That was for bronchitis, but he quickly recovered following a course of antibiotics. TV, online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now though, back to Laurence.
We are living in the era of the worship of lies. Driven by fear, we kneel in supplication to falsehood and wrong. In our end of days, vainglorious and carefree arrogance, we have forgotten about mankind's ability to forge dreams from the air, remembering instead only to deify the basest, least compelling and defining parts of who we really are and what our short time on this planet actually means. To be fair, we have been concertedly abused into this position by weak and fearful men, crazed safetyists and nihilistic zero-deathers who took hope by the neck and before our very eyes wrung it, all but lifeless, for our own damn good. Their reckless eulogy now the steady pile of excess bodies which continue to pile up week on week, month on month, year on year, like an edifice to the collateral damage of their terror. There is a reason it is said we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Because when a society orientates itself on fear, chaos is loosed upon the world. But those who sought to save themselves by telling you how to live have not slunk away chastened and ashamed. Instead, they strut the streets among us, their minds consumed only with conjuring up the next lie to collapse in abject and false worship before, so they may find in their pernicious meddling some semblance of meaning. We see this worship of the climate hypocrisy and some might say hoax and the feckless march towards net zero. The zero-deathers disparage humanity itself so deeply as to see it as some sort of malevolent and sticky virus sweeping across this planet, parasitizing Mother Earth for the original sin of just being alive. The pursuit of hope, so crucial to the flourishing of humanity, is replaced by the much simpler pursuit of hate, for that which separates and that which divides. For the darkness in our hearts and the hideous human suffering and repentance demanded for Earth to survive in spite of our abominable existence. Violent compassion for Mother Earth drives us ever closer to the precipice of reason. And despite every single lie we are told, every lost prediction and rigged ballot of propaganda, tall oak trees still look on in stoic confusion, providing constant shade from the burning and angry sun. We see the worship of lies in humanity's desire not to celebrate the best, but to lionize the worst. Next week begins the celebration of fully 1/3 of a year's cultist obsession with sex, unironically called Pride Month, where we all have to pretend we care two hoots about the baser things consenting adults decide to do behind closed doors. Not content with our aloof acceptance and understanding, those who hate being alive make ever more deviant demands, forcing our compliance and affirmation of their fleshly whims. And with no low-hanging fruit left to pick in society's gentle and inspiring civil progression, darker, sourer berries are sought, deep-coloured berries, which have remained long out of reach in the upper branches of our imaginations. Children's perfect bodies are now in the sights of the lascivious who delight in chaos and mutilation. But as sure as there are these moments, and they arise, they must also subside. The cycle of life is unwelcoming to constant terror, inhospitable to disorder and chaos. These battles are not new. They have raged 1,000 times before. They are ever repeating and repeated, and mankind is canny and elusive to their destructive desires. He has methods to treat the malignant tumours which periodically eat away at proper consciousness. And just as every tool can be used to create or destroy, there is a dual purpose to all our actions and motivations. We have history to remind us of what happens when we use ourselves for hope and human flourishing, and history also to remind us of what happens when opposite forces run wild instead. So, it is with hope that the songs of change grow louder every day. Like a faint chatter from deep in the cosmos, there is a shift taking place. More and more voices sing out against involuntary observance to a religion which glorifies in the worship of lies. We must stand together against the pointlessly virtuous who gleefully torture young minds with their lies about the planet, their own unique and precious bodies, so the virtuous can feel less empty inside. And as the sun begins to set on the era of the worship of lies, a new dawn is coming, and with it, proclamation and affirmation of the truth. So, tonight, I'm asking you, with the news, British cycling has banned men from women's cycling categories. Is this a great day for British cycling? And in a special return of the Fox on the Spot, you get to send me your lovely birthday messages, and the most offensive ones will definitely be read out. Email me at gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Lots of Fox or at GBNews. Tonight, I am very excited to be joined by Conservative commentator, author and speaker and host of The Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire, Michael Knowles. Michael's best-selling book, Reasons to Vote Democrat, was released to rapturous reviews despite being composed of 266 blank pages. Makes sense to me. His latest book, Speechless, Words Controlling Minds, is out now. The Daily Wire was started in 2015 by two friends, Jeremy Bering and Ben Shapiro, and is the fastest-growing conservative website in America. Beloved of millions of sensible-minded Americans, as well as being home to Michael's show, also causing trouble online are the mega brain of Ben Shapiro, Andrew Klavan, and Matt Walsh, creator of the hugely popular What is a Woman documentary. And when he is not attracting non-binary rage from his frequent campus speaking engagements, which I highly recommend you look up. Earlier this year, Michael caused controversy at CPAC when he shared his thoughts on transgender ideology.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too. And if it's false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology.
Good evening, Michael.
Laurence, wonderful to be with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Michael, why has mankind abandoned truth and started to worship lies?
Well, the long answer, the way historical answer, is that our ancestor ate an apple in the Garden of Eden and sin and death pervade the world, and the father of lies is the leader of the principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. That's the old religious answer, and you see this play out time and time again. But I totally grant you, Laurence, sometimes it gets a little better, sometimes it gets a little worse, and we are living in a period where it has become extraordinarily egregious that today, if you acknowledge the difference between a man and a woman, if you state a basic fact that a man cannot become a woman, you can be ostracized from society, you can be fired from your job, you can be prosecuted in some places. So the left has become extraordinarily aggressive about this. And the question why, I think I would defer to one of your countrymen. I know it's become cliche to cite George Orwell in 1984, but this is the plot of 1984, which is that if a power can get you to lie, that is an extraordinary exercise of that power. They will have a lot of control over you. And worse still, if they can get you to believe the lie, if that power can get you not to be able to discern between truth and falsehood, well, then they've just totally gotten you. And so people still have common sense. I think today people still can tell the difference between truth and lies generally. But there is a culture of confusion that is spreading here, and it's why the left is so insistent on pushing this issue. Sometimes the left will say, what do you care? Who cares if you use the wrong pronoun? Who cares if a man goes into the woman's bathroom? And the answer to that, of course, is, well, you all seem to care. You all on the left are spending a lot of time and money and energy trying to get me to call a man she and trying to let a woman, or a man rather, into the woman's bathroom. And you want to do that because words shape the way that we view the world. It shapes our entire worldview. And they believe that if they can control the language, they can control our minds.
And we're seeing now, a sort of corporate war with wokeism and Anheuser-Busch and Trans-Anheuser-Busch, as you call them, and others. What's in it for these companies to divide down ideological lines when all you really want from a beer company or a running apparatus company is just their product? You don't want a political lecture from a corporation. Who's behind this?
I certainly don't want a political lecture from my beer company, and Trans-Anheuser-Busch is suffering greatly for this. They've lost something like $12 billion in market cap, and the prices, the revenues rather, keep getting worse for them. This is affecting other companies like Target and Ford and others. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because the people who control the investment and the people who control the industry, multinational organizations that set standards for the industry, they are on the side of radicalism, especially as we head into the liberal liturgical month of Pride, which, as you rightly point out, is now taking up about a quarter of the year. Those people are pushing this radical ideology. The customers generally are not, but in the short run, it makes more sense for these companies to go along with the asset managers, the big institutional investors. There are basically three big asset managers that are going to control a large number of corporations around the world. That would be BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Well, they've all signed on to the ESG, environmental social governance, woke policies. And if a company violates those policies, that's going to severely hamper their ESG score, and they're going to find themselves on the wrong side of the people with the money. Same goes for GARM. GARM is a project not only of a lot of multinational corporations, it's now been adopted by the World Economic Forum and all of the left-wingers who find themselves in the highest echelons of the liberal establishment. GARM says that if you contradict the woke agenda, if you contradict transgenderism in this case in particular, you will be punished. You won't have access to advertising. You won't have access to certain platforms. And so we recognize there's a big difference between the people and what the people believe and the political order and those who pull the levers of power. And this is one of those issues where it is so clear. But in the long run, of course, this enmeshment between the non-government organizations, the governments, and the corporations does provide the liberals a lot of control and the ability to advance their agenda. It's just the pesky people who occasionally push back and say, no, thank you.
And we bemoan, a conservative would always bemoan cancel culture. They would say that cancel culture is the most insidious attack on individual thoughts and rights to think. But at the same time, what we're doing now is we're encouraging boycotts, and we're essentially we're having to play the game that's being played against us by returning a cancel culture to them. Do you think that's the effective way? You were saying, you said earlier, we have to obliterate transgenderism as an ideology, not transgender people, because as you quite rightly point out, they don't really exist. It's no such thing. But is boycotting in our own version of cancel culture the way to deal with these ideologues?
Well, all cultures cancel, and all cultures have standards and norms and taboos. We're not going to get around that. Now, you and I, Laurence, and I think common sense, ordinary conservative people would like to have a nice, open-minded, civil kind of country where we can all get along. And the left would like to push us all out of the public square. But there does have to be a line. The reason that my CPAC speech caused such an uproar is because everybody, most especially the liberals, knew the point to be true. And the point is this: on certain issues, we can meet in the middle and find a conciliatory middle ground. On taxes, say, I want lower taxes, someone wants higher taxes. Okay, we meet in the middle. Immigration, I want much less migration, some people want more. Okay, we meet somewhere in the middle. On the issue of transgenderism, either women are going to have bathrooms or they won't. Either women are going to be able to have their own cycling leagues or they won't. The minute that one man gets to enter the women's bathroom or one man gets to compete against women in sports, then women lose that. And so we simply have to pick a side. We cannot simultaneously establish mutually contradictory principles in society. So now we have an option. Are we going to live according to how we have lived for thousands of years and according to a way that happens to be true, which is that men and women are different? Or are we going to live according to the way we've lived for the past, 5 minutes, which says that men and women are exactly the same and men can become women and vice versa? We're going to have to pick one, and I would just as soon live under the standard that happens to be true and has served us well for a very long time than the radical new leftist standard.
So you made an allusion earlier, a biblical allusion, which was, this stuff goes right back to the Garden of Eden. Would you say that next up on the list for our friends on the extreme left is religion itself?
Of course, it always is. The church has always been the object here. This is why, by the way, the left is so insistent upon redefining marriage. The Christian understanding of marriage is that marriage is a symbol of the relationship between Christ and his church. And then at the level of just nature, we recognize that marriage is the fundamental building block. We're not just atomized individuals. We didn't just pop out of the sky, free floating. We're born into a family from a mommy and a daddy. The family is the basic political unit. And so if the left wants to upend society, it's not enough just to take over the schools. It's not enough not just to take over the media. They have to attack that fundamental political unit in order to redefine it. And one great way to do that for them, one very effective way, will be to redefine man and woman. But of course, it is a rebellion against the church. Whittaker Chambers, the former communist who became more conservative in the 20th century, Chambers said that communism, we can broaden it to radical leftism, is not a new ideology. It's actually one of the oldest ideologies. It began in the Garden of Eden when the serpent told Eve, "Ye shall be as gods." John F. Kennedy liked to say, "Some people see things that are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not." That's a line that he cribbed from George Bernard Shaw. And Shaw put the line in the mouth of the serpent in the garden, tempting Eve. That's the difference here. Will we make ourselves gods and craft a world after our own fantasies? Or will we recognize that there is such a thing as reality, moral, biological, and everywhere in between? And will we live our lives in accordance with that reality, which is, of course, the only way that one actually can flourish?
And do you think that the tables are turning, that people are now wiser to this, that your average ordinary person, we've seen it with the boycotts, but are you sensing in America where you have a First Amendment that people really want to speak out? And how do you think that might feed into the presidential primaries and the presidential election itself?
Yes, the people get it. I have never been more encouraged than I am by the people, by mothers showing up to their school boards saying they don't want their kids being taught radical gender ideology in school. You're seeing this reflected in the presidential campaigns of Donald Trump, of Ron DeSantis, and of Vivek Ramaswamy, and of other people too. So this is very much catching on here in the United States. And so you're seeing a reaction from the left to clamp down on all of this. And the reason I mentioned earlier GARM, ESG, the World Economic Forum, the big asset managers, is because while the government of the United States has to abide by the First Amendment, while the public institutions have to abide by it, the corporations do not. And so what happens is that the government outsources the censorship, outsources its dirty work to these corporations, to the social media platforms. When you look at 3 social media platforms controlling speech in the public square, Google, Facebook, and Twitter, which fortunately now is owned by Elon Musk, those guys control 90% of the flow of information around the internet. And in a republic, the flow of information, speech, is how you govern yourself. So that is now where the focus has to lie. Will we be able to insist upon ordinary, broad standards of speech in that corporate, semi-private sphere? Because if not, we can celebrate the First Amendment till kingdom come. We still will lose our ability to state basic truths if we don't act quickly.
Well, we have the online harms bill coming through Parliament at the moment, which is terrifying, and every opportunity is used to do it. Michael, quick prediction. How do you see the presidential election going?
I'm not so foolish as to put all my money on the table with any candidate. We're still very early on. The polls show it is Donald Trump's race to lose. But we've got a new candidate in the race, DeSantis. I mentioned my friend Vivek Ramaswamy. There are a number of other people there. And I'll just tell you this, compared to past elections, if our choices are between Donald Trump, greatest president of my lifetime, Ron DeSantis, greatest governor in America today, an outside candidate like Vivek, a number of other candidates in the field, the conservatives are in good shape. Then we'll just have to figure out how to win the general.
And what will happen with, sorry, just finally, Biden I've been watching for the last couple of days, and he seems to really have slightly fallen off a cliff in a way, you know, emotionally and intellectually. What about Robert Kennedy? Will Robert Kennedy get a look in here on the Democrat side?
Robert Kennedy is a wonderful figure in this race because he's an old liberal Democrat from the 1960s, and you can't just write him off because he's Bobby Kennedy's son. He's President Kennedy's nephew. This is a major figure in the Democrat Party, and his very existence is a major thorn in the side of Joe Biden and the Democrats because he shows, almost like someone frozen in amber from the heyday of the Democratic Party, he shows just how far the Democrats have fallen, just how radical they have become. You mentioned Biden's fallen off a cliff, not literally yet, though it could be any day now, and he's certainly fallen off in terms of his polls. The question is, will it matter? Will that be reflected in the vote come November?
Well, we're going to have to find out. Michael Knowles, thank you so much for joining me. Right. You're watching and listening to GB News. Coming up, if we took back control with Brexit, then is Rishi Sunak's government purposefully leaving the gates open? Why else are the immigration figures so appallingly high and randomly different? 1,600,000, so it's crazy. And British cycling, finally, allow women to have their own category. Wow, who would have thought it? About time, isn't it? Back in 3.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hola, coconuts. It's the Fox and the Newshounds panel. Joining me is Dominic Samuels, commentator and broadcaster, and Dennis McShane, former Labour Minister for Europe. Welcome, both of you. Right, first up, guys and girls. Am I allowed to say girls?
No, I'm a woman.
All right, girls and women. Women. We'll mix then. Right, first up, we're going to kick off with the big news of the week, and it's migration, isn't it?
As always.
What do we think about migration? Are we happy that it's less than 1 million? Let's start with Dominique.
Well, I mean, it's worse than what people expected, what experts expected, because they were saying, 700,000 to 1 million. However, it's clear that the government has failed on immigration, especially since, the vote to leave the EU, and all of the rhetoric since then has been about lowering immigration. And I think it's clear that the Conservatives no longer have a monopoly on that debate because of what they have materially produced.
They don't even have a soliloquy in that debate at the moment.
No, and what's annoying is that, it keeps being dragged back to, well, what would Labour do? And I, don't align myself with either Labour or the Conservatives. But what's annoying, though, is would Labour have been able to top those figures of, 606,000, or would they have done basically the same thing,
Dennis, are Labour the party of strong borders?
They should be. They have been in the past, but I started my political life a long time ago when there was a chap called Enoch Powell who raised a furore in England saying that the parents of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, he didn't mention them by name, of course, should be repatriated. And people loved it, and the Tories thought that would be a big election winner. The trouble is, it is utterly poisonous, toxic politics. Yes, I think Rishi Sunak is mad to have gone round boasting, saying, elect me and I will cut immigration, when government departments are going around Pakistan, Nigeria, Philippines, recruiting nurses and doctors, because we expelled all the people from Europe just across the border who went backwards and forwards, who are working in our hospitals and doing lots of essential work. And now, at huge cost, we're having to bring in people from very far away countries.
Why, just a quick question, because I don't know the answer to this, why aren't British people working in hospitals?
That is a very good question. Simply, all along, we've never trained enough doctors, we've never trained enough nurses. Yeah. The Royal Colleges of Surgeons and GPs like to keep up the pay. It's called a closed shop, same as with lawyers and judges, and therefore they train English people, British citizens, to be good doctors, but there's twice as many doctors needed, so they've always, all my life, imported them from Ireland, for example, from India.
We like an Irish nurse. Come on. We do like an Irish nurse.
And this is the thing, and, people that are on sort of the free market side of the scale would say, you're a socialist if you want to be paid more, but we've been in this mindset of, scarcity for so long in this country.
What do you mean, scarcity?
Scarcity in terms of, we can't afford to pay people this amount. We can't afford to make these jobs actually attractive to British people. And the Conservative government has been in a rock and a hard place for quite a few years now, because the vote to Brexit, many people are arguing, and I was one of the people that was arguing this, let's stop relying on migrant labour. That's not to say that there's, they're evil people that shouldn't come here, but it's to say that we should be prioritising British people. But the Conservatives don't seem to actually want to do that. They don't want to pay people properly. The reason why people are striking, and, we can debate all day about whether or not they're reasonable, but if you've got hundreds of thousands of people in this country saying, we're not happy with our working conditions, some of us are having to go to food banks despite the fact we are doing essential jobs, then you've got a bit of a problem here. So no wonder we're having to import people, because nobody wants to do jobs where they're paid really, really badly and completely undervalued.
I can't argue with that, and I can't argue with that. Dennis, final word?
That's just part of the problem. My recommendation to anybody on this, and I follow it in France and Switzerland and Italy and Greece, where often it's much more vicious than Britain. We think we're the only country that's taking in refugees.
But France is 170,000, 180,000 a year. We're 600,000.
No. In terms of refugees, we've taken 4 times as many. What we've done is taken in an awful lot of people from Hong Kong, which I support, because of Chinese communism. We've taken in also a lot from Ukraine, as have France, Germany, and many more in Poland. Poland already had 2 million Ukrainians. I'm going to Greece later this week. There's 1 million Albanians working there, half legally, half, working in the family network. We have 1 Albanian pitching up on Dover Beach, and you think the kind of Germans had successfully invaded us.
I think, people shouldn't be able to turn up on your beach uninvited. That, I think most people in Britain have that problem, but I respect your decision. Right, calm down. Cycling has finally banned so-called transgender women, aka men, from the female category of its competitions, following a long review and consultation. Apparently, common sense now requires, under a new law, under new participation policy that the governing body said was predicated on fairness, that should have happened a while ago, such athletes will be able to compete in an open category with men. British cycling's policy has allowed transgender women to take part in elite female events even if they met testosterone-based regulations, not taking into account physiological advantages the male body has over the female body. Dennis, what do you think about this?
Well, it's a common-sense decision. I've been reading up about it, obviously, before coming on this evening. Sebastian Coe, Lord Coe, is in charge of international athletics. He's taken the same decision. And I saw one man who's become a woman protesting it was genocide, for heaven's sake.
Oh, it was an interesting post.
I mean, it was extraordinary language. The athletes can compete in an open category, and good luck to them all. And then, cycling will continue. I think it's a real storm in a teacup.
Why? It is not. It is a real storm in a teacup because we've seen American swimmers losing out, female swimmers losing out on places in national competitions. This thing has been brewing for a couple of years. Dominique, why has it taken so long for common sense to prevail?
Well, because a sizable amount of people, I'm afraid, are completely out of touch with reality, and I don't even want to think of it as a ban on transgender cyclists. I would think of it more as a reaffirmation of biological reality, because these are, it's a female category. If you were born a male, you're not female. You don't have the same physiological structure as a woman. You're not a woman. And the question that I frequently like to ask, especially because one of the cyclists, her name's Emily Bridges, I
just read her.
Yeah, she did a tweet saying that this is genocide. And why do you want to compete against women? And that is the question. When you know, and this person must know that they have an advantage, why do you want to do this? It's driven by an egotistical desire to have everybody else confirm what you believe, to reconfirm for you what you believe your identity to be. Now, if you were so secure in your identity and what you are, you wouldn't be as affected by things like this, because you would understand that, yes, I have gender dysphoria, or I believe I was born in the wrong body, but I understand that I will never be a woman. And that's the question that we have to ask these sorts of people.
What is really interesting here is actually I found that the more that we've now just accepted this is a logical thing. People are very understanding. They've, as you say, storming a teacup. People aren't going, yeah, now ban them and throw them away. They're just going, OK, you can have an open category, get on. I just wonder why.
Well, it's become very, very unpleasant. I mean, I'm of the generation where the women of my generation, 40, 50 years, fought so hard for women's rights, and now they feel that all those rights can be thrown away on account of a campaign by people who've got passionate feelings, and don't deny that. And why there's no willingness to compromise, this shouting down of people, this insulting of people who don't share the view that anybody who is trans therefore is a woman and therefore in all senses can compete and all the rest of it. This, I think it will die down over time. It seems to be a very, very British problem.
Well, we've been goaded and bullied into it. Right. I am tooting the half-time horn. Cass, what have you got for the half-time horn? Please. Thanks, Cass. I really, really, really hope you're in a job next week. Right, you are watching and listening to GB News. Still to come, fur babies. Back in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hola, chicas. It's the Fox in the News panel. Joining me is Dominic Samuels, commentator and broadcaster, and Dennis McShane, former Labour Minister for Europe, who is worryingly sound. Right, we're going to have to wind him up now. OK, now look, are you a grandparent to a fur baby? Fur grandbaby, even? Did you hear the pitter-patter of tiny toes and melt when your 4-legged child comes trotting over to you? You're not alone. You're Gen Z. Gen Z are shunning children in favour of man's best friend and cats. Dominique, how many fur babies do you have?
I don't have any, unfortunately. No, I don't. But I plan on getting a cat because I'm Gen Z.
Instead of a child?
Well, I think it's a bit early to have a kid.
What do you mean it's a bit early to have a kid?
Have one with anyway.
You'd have 5 already by now if it's the 15th century, and then you'd all be at work.
Well, kids can wait, but I do plan on getting a cat because I like pets, but I just haven't gotten round to it.
Dennis, I hear you had a fascist cat.
I had a cat many years ago called Thatcher, who was incredible. She'd fall off my 3rd-floor balcony in Kentish Town and bounce right back up again.
Oh, God.
She was indestructible, except she kept sort of getting into trouble with fur balls. I don't want to go into too much detail, but just clogged up her poor little throat. No, I mean, we, during the pandemic, we bought 3.2 million pets, mainly dogs. There's a big campaign to ban puppies, a lot of MPs supporting it, but this week the government sabotaged it because you can just buy puppies off the web now, and so many of them since have been abandoned. All the dogs' homes, rescue homes, all say, for heaven's sake, get back that old slogan, a pet is for life, not for Christmas.
But should people Should people be not thinking about having kids and raising families? We've got a demographic decline. Demography is everything in this country. We're really struggling. Should the government, should we all as a society be encouraging parenthood and
very much so. I mean, I remember getting into terrible trouble with my dear friend Polly Toynbee years ago as an MP. I said Labour, the incoming Labour government, should do more to support families. Families incarnate that wonderful line from each according to his means to each according to his need or her need. In other words, families where solidarity is there, education is there, there's a clip around the bottom or whatever.
Hang on a minute. He's gone. He's a full Nazi.
I know.
He's just condoned the smacking of children.
Assault.
This is a public service announcement. We do condone the smacking... No, we don't condone the smacking of children. Dominic, no, I said we don't cast... Get us into humour. She never stops. Dominic, come on. How long? Until you've got 7.
Well, I can't put a timer on it.
We've got a demographic collapse.
Yes.
We're at 1.6. You're going to need to do 7. I'll do another 4.
Yeah, right, OK. I'll get on that. But in general, yeah, I would agree that we do need to be having more kids because it seems to be a trend really across Western countries that our birth rates are declining. And
Why?
I think, particularly in Japan as well, they're in a real danger of basically ceasing to exist. I think it's as things have changed. So we've changed socially, so there's less incentive for young women to actually want to settle down because, you know, we're all liberal and free and climbing the corporate ladder. But it's also, you know, economically, it's just not really feasible at the moment to settle down and have a big family. You know, it's very difficult to own your own home. Really, economically, you need 2 people working in the household, unless the husband or the wife is like extremely rich to be able to sustain a comfortable lifestyle. So yeah, I think that the government should be doing more. The only thing is, it sort of goes against the free market neoliberal consensus that we have across Europe economically that says that government shouldn't be intervening too much in people's lives and their income, etc., etc. So,
well, don't worry, we've got a Labour person here to balance the free market. What would Keir Starmer go out and say to the electorate to motivate people, to give them hope and optimism about the future of the country and of the family?
On the family, one very simple thing. There's a wonderful MP called Stella Creasy who is campaigning particularly on childcare. I helped bring up 4 children in the early part of their lives, not the last one, Benjamin, he was born after I became an MP, in France. And there you've got maternity, maternal care, kindergartens, nurseries, and it's all free. And
but that's not free here, is it? Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a solution to the problem, though. Because whilst, yes, it's important that people can afford to get childcare when they need it, but at the same time, you're essentially paying an arm of the state to act as a parent for your child instead of raising them yourself.
Well, look, if you want the 2 parents who are educated, been to university like you have and Laurence has to fulfil...
I didn't go to university, they didn't let me in, I'm too thick.
Oh, I don't believe that. Then it's a good idea to help them bring up children. And I think we've got the most expensive childcare in Europe. I'm a grandparent, and I look at my children. One of the things we could do, now it's a bit controversial, very controversial, Brexit killed au pairs. Mothers' helps coming in to learn English, living at home, you know, in an upstairs room. Now you've got to get a visa, you've got to earn a lot of money, and so nobody can afford...
Who can afford an au pair? I mean, the average person probably can't afford an au pair.
No, on the contrary, and in the day...
I don't know anyone that has an au pair.
I am still recovering from how unbelievably disappointingly grown up this panel was.
Sorry,
why didn't you argue? You could have fought, you could have shouted, you could have called each other fascists or something. God. Anyway, thank you for the very sensible Dominic and the very sensible Dennis.
I'm going home.
For being on my panel. He's going home. Next, it's all about you and what you think, which is going to be fun, I'm sure. We'll be back in 3.
I
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's all coming to an end. And it's now time for you to tell me what you think of what we've been talking about on the show. So, on British Cycling's decision to ban transgender women, or give them an open category, Jane has said, common sense, facts beat feelings, as Ben Shapiro often says, and the decision is totally correct. No one has been excluded, just assigned to the correct category. It's a very reasonable thing to say. Leo said, 100% correct decision. Fairness is the most important thing in sports, after winning, of course. And this is actually a really important point. Now that this silly ridiculousness has been solved, you find that your average punter isn't anti-trans or anything, they're just pro-fairness. And that's what I've noticed today. The dialogue has been about, this is good, now let's be tolerant and include trans people to play in their own unique category. On the Just Stop Oil protesters, Oliver says, Just Stop Oil have absolutely nothing to do with saving the planet, are instead a group aiming to anger public opinion into allowing draconian laws to end the right to protest. One does wonder, doesn't one, whether Just Stop Oil might be a convenient little organisation to bring in an end to protests. And finally, Carol says, wow, what a wonderful interview, Laurence. Hey! Conductor with Michael Knowles. You should be nice. Usually people say mean things. So interesting, and Laurence asked such insightful questions. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for watching. That's really nice. Right, now, I asked you to put me on your spot with happy birthday messages. Cass! It's time for Fox on the Spot, and here's what you had to say. Harry on Twitter with his 17 followers says, a failed actor presents a woke show. I think I'll give it a miss. I'll miss you. Sorry. Matt says, dear incel lord, I think we can all celebrate another year closer to your inevitable demise. Oh, God, thank you. It means so much on my birthday. Greg, Laurence, I think this is going to go well. Today we commiserate on the anniversary of your regrettable escape from the womb. Get in the sea. Oh, it's so moving. This is modern political discourse and modern social media discourse is so uplifting. Thank you so much. Valia, happy birthday, you wonderful incendiary beacon of free speech. Wowzers. That was, I had to get ready because my life is basically one permanent attack from someone or other. Anyway, finally one from Victoria. Happy birthday from the US to one of my favourite, most GB News presenters ever. Oh, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone, for sending in those very charming messages about my impending death. Thank you to my panel, to my guests, and most of all to you. Up next is Mark Dolan. Mark, what is on the show tonight?
Well, a massive developing story, Laurence. Philip Schofield has been sensationally dumped by his agent. He's been with the agent for over 20 years. He owns shares in the company. Why has he gone? Well, he has now admitted that he lied about his relationship with a young employee. We will bring you full coverage straight after this. First up, the weather.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update for GB News from the Met Office. The weekend promises a lot of fine weather. There will be a fair bit of cloud around in some spots, but generally some sunshine, staying dry, feeling warm in the sunshine, although this cold front will introduce a slightly cooler feel, particularly as we go through Sunday and Monday. But a big area of high pressure dominating our weather, meaning a lot of dry conditions out there. Some cloud over northern England, breaking up a little bit this evening. The cloud is thickening ahead of that weather front across northernmost parts of Scotland. A little bit of light rain and drizzle is possible here by dawn. But for most places, dry and clear and quite chilly, actually. Temperatures, certainly in rural spots, 2 or 3 degrees, so not too far off freezing. So a fresh start to the weekend, but sun's up early and the sun is strong, so it'll soon start to lift those temperatures. It will stay predominantly cloudy through the morning over the Highlands and the Western Isles. A bit of a damp start here as well, but that rain edging into the mainland of Scotland, kind of fizzling out as it does so, so brightening up in the far northwest. Sunny spells for the majority. A cooler feel in the far north, but elsewhere temperatures a little bit higher than today's values, more widely into the 20s. Cooler again on some coasts for sure, but inland we could get 23, maybe 24 degrees. And quite a pleasant Saturday evening. We will see a bit more clouds spilling down, initially over northern England, then into eastern England to start Sunday. But again, generally it's going to be another fine day.